Hi, this is Bronwyn the Brave, and I'm showing how to graft the two ends of my Frost Heaves Cowl. I have finished my cowl and blocked it, that's really important, and I had taken the stitches off the needle and placed it onto scrap yarn so I could block it, but I've replaced those stitches on the needle, and now I have wrong sides together, and the yarn is coming from the back. What's going to happen is, this is my cast on right here, where I just knit a couple of rows in the scrap yarn and then jumped in on row 1 of my chart with my working yarn. And that just gives me something to hang on to, and also I'm able to work those yarn overs, and we'll see how those are treated in just a minute. And then this side is my live stitches. We're going to do duplicate stitch on this half, and then a modified Kitchener. So we'll do a Kitchener in pattern on the live stitches. We're just going to find this first stitch, and the way that I do that is I see the top of my cast on right here, and I just follow this line of stitches. So I've got this stitch right here, and see how it's wrapping around to the other side. That's how the I-cord, it's the nature of the I-cord. So to join the two edges together, we're going to start by taking the needle through this stitch, and we're going to be tracing that path of the scrap yarn. So the way to work Kitchener in pattern, there's a couple of rules to follow. You're only going to need to look at the first 2 stitches, number 1. And the stitch that is first on the needle directs how you put the needle into the stitch. So on the wrong side, which this is, so we have wrong sides together, this stitch would have been purled on the wrong side. So I'm going to put my needle in purlwise. And the next stitch should have been purled on the wrong side. So because the 2 stitches are the same, it was purl, purl, then we treat them differently. So we went in purlwise here, we go in knitwise. So we'll take this stitch off. Purlwise and then knitwise, and leave this one on. We'll just snug those 2 up. So now we're going to go under the needle so we don't add a stitch that we don't need. And I like to pull my needle tip out just a little bit so it doesn't lose any stitches. So this yarn is my working yarn. So it would have gone up here, but instead it went across. But pretending that this was this stitch right here, it would have gone up and over. So where that little bit of orange is, it's where the next stitch is going to be. And it would go up this line. This is why it's a really good idea to use a contrasting color for that cast on in the scrap yarn, so you can see the difference between your stitches and you can follow the line more easily. So that's all we have to do on this, the cast on edge. Then we go back to the live stitches, and remember this stitch would have been a purl, so we're going to go in purlwise and take it off. And this third stitch would have been a purl, so those 2 stitches are the same. We're going to treat them differently. So that was purl, and then this one we'll do a knit and leave it on. Make sure it doesn't go across the needle, it stays under the needle. This is my last purl stitch, so we're going to purl that one, but this stitch would be a knit on the wrong side, so we're going to treat them the same. So this was a purl, we're going to go into this one purlwise and leave it on. So if they're the same stitch, you treat them differently. If they're different stitches, you treat them the same. Now this 4th stitch is a little tricky just because it's right next to the I-cord, I think. So take your time and follow that path of the scrap yarn. So right here is where the working yarn is coming from. So it would have come up and followed the line of this stitch right here. So it's going through these and then back down. And then sometimes you just need to pick it apart a little bit. So there's this little loop of yarn right here. There we go. All right, so there's half of the stitch. And then it would come back up right here. Now we have 2 knits. So the first stitch, we're going to go in knitwise and off. And because they're the same type of stitch, we're going to go in the opposite way. So we go in purlwise on the second knit. And leave it on. There's a decrease. Make sure I don't catch anything that it shouldn't. Now we have, this was our yarn over, right? There's our purl, and here's another purl, so we're going to go in knitwise. And this was our decrease, so we want to make sure that goes through one more time. And go through both of those stitches. Make sure you go through both. And this was a purl, followed by a knit, so those go in the same way. Alright, and because we went into this stitch already twice, the decrease, this is our yarn over, so our next stitch is going to be here. So if you get confused, follow this path, the path of this yarn right here, all the way down, and then back up again. Now we have a knit stitch and a yarn over, but on the wrong side of yarn overs, we purl those. So we have a knit and a purl. So we have a knit and off, and the purled stitch is different than the knit, so we're going to treat them the same. So we go in knitwise on that yarn over. So we have another yarn over here. So the yarn is coming from here, from right here, so it would have traveled this way. So we'll go through those 2 loops. And now, this is a purl, followed by another purl because it's a yarn over, so we would have purled that one. So that one we go knitwise. And because this is our decrease right here, we need to go through that twice. The second stitch, I know, you can see, it would have been this one right here. So if you want to try to make it look more like the real decrease, come in this way. I'm trying not to split my plies there. So there's actually 2 loops behind there. You can't see them because they're stacked. Especially towards the end, as you're getting rid of these stitches, it's going to be more likely for you to yank the needle out of the opposite direction that you want. So losing those stitches might be more common now. So just be careful. About here is where you start to panic and you hope that you've not run out of stitches. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I have 10. So that's good because the back needle is the second half. Okay, we have 4 stitches left on the needle. We have our 3 I-cord stitches and 1 knit. So we will go into this knit as if to knit, and then as you were knitting the entire cowl, these 3 stitches were actually slipped. But let's try treating those as if they're purls and see how that looks. So this was a knit, this is a purl. They are different stitches, so we will treat them the same. So this is purl followed by a purl, and go there. Now this stitch would have come up and around through this loop and this loop. And these are purls. So we purl this one. Try not to get this stitch pulled out of joint. It's really easy to make it loose. And then we'll go knitwise into that last stitch and leave it on the needle. We just need to be careful not to drop that last stitch. And now, because it's an I-cord, it's going to roll around to the back. But, so here's our working yarn coming out here. And it would follow this path of this stitch right here. So it's coming through these loops. Except that this isn't really a loop anymore. This is my tail from where I joined the very first row with my my chart with the working yarn. Okay, we have 1 stitch left, and we will go in purlwise and take it off. All right, let's take a look. We'll neaten up these I-cord stitches a tiny bit. Sometimes I like to use the eye of my needle. Go ahead and take the yarn off. Okay, let's take a look. So there we have it. We'll block it one more time and get that to scrunch back down to be the right gauge, and besides the fact that we've got this extra fabric in there. Alright, I have some sharp scissors here, and I am going to start snipping stitches and holding my breath. So I'm just going to start here kind of in the middle of the end, and see what happens. We'll use my needle, pull that out. Let's double check what we're doing here. so far so good. Oh, I think I lost a stitch right here. Crud. Alright, let's take a look and see. I'm just going to pull apart where that line of stitching was. I don't see any other stitches coming loose. So it looks like it's just this one. So not too bad. Oh, I'm losing them all. They're all attached. Alright, I will fix that, but otherwise, so that is grafting in pattern, like in the extreme. I know that was really intense, so I have an alternative for my cast on and bind off of my Frost Heaves Cowl. It involves just casting on as normal and binding off as normal, and then sewing the two ends together. But I think this is a really good result, so if you are the least bit brave, take a chance and give it a try. So thanks for watching, and be sure to check out my Frost Heaves Cowl. There are a couple things wrong with the way that I did this. First of all, I should have gone through the stitch from right to left, not left to right. And the other thing is, it's not even the right stitch. I was going as if the scrap yarn was being joined to the live stitches instead of the green working yarn. So you should follow the path of the scrap yarn as it goes through the stitch. Every knitter has a bit of bravery inside. How brave are you?